Hello and welcome to the Biters Retrospective. This is Diane from the frozen but not even remotely snowy Alaska.
And this is your zombified 30-something Brian, as always.
How you doing tonight?
I am a little sniffly, if you can probably tell. And that's just about it. It's hot, cold, rainy, and snowy here in Iowa. And I'm pretty tired of it, and so are my sinuses.
I really think Iowa is getting more of a winter than we are.
Oh, it's stupid. I'd much rather have global warming at this point.
So
Give me 70s and sunny.
I was totally driving out Kinnick, which is an area that's historic if you follow the Iditarod at all, the dog sled race. And Joe Reddington, who was famous for putting the Iditarod together and keeping it going, there's a memorial trail named after him, and they used to run the race down that trail after the official start in Anchorage, and it is dirt. It's solid dirt.
Oh, wow.
I'm thinking, wow, it's February in Alaska, and the Joe Reddington Memorial Trail is solid dirt.
Huh, that's
so
crazy.
If you want safety from zombies, you're going to have to go a lot farther north or to Antarctica at this point. So
well, awesome.
we're doing our retrospective. Thanks for those who are being patient, waiting for Rob to get the first episode up and edited. He's had some unforeseen things happen lately. And tonight we are talking about Season 1, Episode 2, Guts.
And it wasn't really that hard to kind of figure out where this title came from.
Yeah.
The one thing that I typically like doing in our present day Walking Dead episodes is we have to kind of put some thought into the titles, or sometimes the titles have dual meanings.
Exactly.
Season 1, it's just like, yeah, guts. There you go. That's what we're called, guts.
The one thing I will say, and I kind of thought about this today, and it seems really obvious now, but it also took a lot of guts for Glenn and Rick to make the run that they made to go and get the van at the end of the episode.
Sure.
And I think it just kind of refers, for me, it really speaks to Glenn's character and his guts, being the person who up until this point has gone in and out of Atlanta and done runs by himself. So,
yeah, we always look at, everyone always talks about the big story arc of Carol and how she was the abused wife and now she's the biggest badass on the planet right now. But a lot of people tend to overlook Glenn.
Right.
I mean, Glenn was the shy pizza boy all the way up until Maggie took advantage of him in the pharmacy store.
It's so apparent watching this episode too, because, you just see what a baby-faced kid he is in this episode. It was really nice actually to visit the old Glenn for a while.
Yeah, that and Daryl. Daryl's something it's funny to kind of look back and just kind of giggle at, and it's good. It's good to see them, in the series this long. They kept some people around, they've got rid of some others, and that's kind of the joy of being able to do these retrospectives now and kind of look back and say, what did I see in this person? Or, oh yeah, that's what I seen in this person.
Right. Hey. So I did a little bit of looking back at numbers and writer and director, and the numbers actually went down a little bit for this episode from the pilot. And again, this is just same day viewing. So the pilot was like 5.6 million people, which was a blockbuster and still is a blockbuster in terms of pilot numbers. This went down to 4.7 million viewers same day, but it was still huge for an essentially unknown, untried series.
Sure. And, you have to kind of wonder if people were really dialing in that first one just to kind of see what it was about. Because if I remember, when did this first one debut?
It actually debuted on Halloween in 2010.
So what else? So you got November, you've got all these football programs. Are you convincing people to turn off football?
Right.
There's a lot of these things that kind of go into that thought process because you don't have that relationship with The Walking Dead as what you do now. I'm sure American Idol was out then, and there's some other silly shows on other channels. So it's kind of neat to see how they compare in that same time.
And the first episode, too, I mean, the little peak in viewership there as compared to this one may have simply been people who were like, hey, it's Halloween, let's watch a zombie movie, not really thinking about what they were getting into. So This one was also written by Frank Darabont, so was the pilot. And I looked him up a little bit more because we had talked about him last time, and I said, well, I know that he's got a big, long reputation, but I personally don't know that much about him. So he is really tight with Jeff DeMunn, who is the guy who played Dale. And he's really tight with Laurie Holden, who is the gal who played Andrea, and they've worked with him quite a bit in other things. Thing that I didn't know about him is that he actually was born in a French refugee camp to Hungarian parents who were fleeing the Soviet occupation of Budapest.
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. And then he's well known for taking on a lot of Stephen King projects. He directed Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile.
Wow.
Which I thought was kind of cool. I knew that he had involvement in The Mist, but I didn't realize he'd been involved in both of those, and I really liked both of those. So
that's pretty crazy. I didn't realize he was that in-depth and had an interesting background.
Yeah, and he's got quite a bit of involvement in other projects as well, but I just kind of picked up those few. So the episode was directed by Michelle McLaren, who's got a couple of other Walking Dead episodes to her name. She directed A, which was the last episode about Terminus before season 5 opened.
Yeah, love that one.
Yeah. And then she also directed Pretty Much Dead Already. And I had to remind myself, and I think that's the one that happened right before Sophia and the Sophia reveal in season 2, the mid-season closer. So, and she's got tons of interesting directing stuff in her background. She was a director for Breaking Bad. She's got some Better Call Saul credits, X-Files, which I love the X-Files, and Game of Thrones. And that's just a few things that she's been involved with. So,
neat.
Yeah, so that was pretty cool to find out a little bit more about her. So what you got for me?
Well, where do we want to start at? Well, I guess one thing that we'll cover here as this series kind of drags along is seeing if you can pick up loose ends as we go through each episode.
Sure.
And that's something I'm kind of looking forward to. So as we kind of talk about this episode, I don't think there's anything specifically in this one. I'm just kind of recanting this one in my head just to make sure there wasn't anything. But I think we're good. We can jump right into the epic fails and epic fails if you'd like.
All right. Do you want to go for it or do you want me to go for it?
You know what? I will take you up on the go first offer.
Okay. So
go ahead.
Oh, you wanted me to go or you're going to go?
No, you go.
Okay. So my epic is that I felt like this was pretty much Merle's standout episode. I mean, I know that he had other big parts in other episodes down the road, but this is the episode where we really learn who he is in all of his drug-abusing, racist, and sexist glory. I mean, he's just so completely horrifying, but he's so over the top that you're really attracted to his character, you know?
Yes, I actually 100% agree because I think we have almost the same epic.
Oh, that's really funny.
Yeah, because mine was the T-Dog Merle exchange with the group and how they're kind of going back and forth. And then even T-Dog comes back to kind of, hey, here's your key. Whoops, never mind. But the big part that was really special for me is this episode in that limited amount of time instantly made me hate Merle.
You're did.
Like, oh my God, I hate this guy.
It made you hate him so much, but it was so perfect, wasn't it?
Yes, and that's why it's my epic, because you instantly arrive about, you're like, God, I hope Rick shoves this guy overboard.
Right.
Or T-Dog just gets tired of him and just starts choking the crap out of him or throws him over the roof. Why not?
I love the part where Rick comes up and clocks him in the back of the head with his gun. You know, that's just a beautiful moment. And it actually, the whole introduction of Merle led to some of my favorite lines in the whole series. So, you know, Rick's got him down and he's talking to him and he's like, look, there's no black or white anymore. There's just light meat and dark meat. So we have to work this out. And I still think about that. And the other one, as Rick is walking away from him after he chains him to that pipe, or handcuffs him to that pipe.
Sure.
He's yelling and screaming at Rick, and he's like, do you hear me? Can you hear me? And Rick says, yeah, your voice carries. And the way that he says it, it's just so flat, but it's such a great line. So, yeah, just, I can't Can't say more than that. I was looking at the wiki for this episode earlier today, and Robert Kirkman actually referred to this as the Michael Rooker episode, which I thought was kind of funny.
Yeah, well, and here's another thing. The one thing that it really showed was how fragile the camp really was. So you see Merle and all of his alpha male dominance, and he's just spouting off this stuff to anybody who he wants to. He's calling women, sugar blanks, and, he's calling just everything. He just, whatever he wants to call people, he is doing it.
Oh, yeah.
Without question.
He says all that stuff that your uncle that you don't want to have Thanksgiving with says.
Yeah.
I mean, he called Lori a rug muncher. Think I can get away with saying that. Called, what was his name? The Latino guy. He called him a taco bender. I mean, he was just horrible.
Yeah. So he's going off on these things, and it showed how weak the group was. And later when we learn when Merle and Daryl are reunited out in the woods and they kind of escape from the governor, and he's like, wait, you're going back to the group? And he's like, yeah, they're my family. And, he's like, that Chinese kid, and he's like, he's Korean. There's a difference.
Right. And that line, taking that line back to the next episode.
He tells him when they're out in the woods, I think it's either end of season 3 or beginning of 4 when they escape from the governor.
Mm-hmm.
And he's telling him, do you remember what we were going to do to those people? You fell in love with them. You're one of them now. You're not one of them. We were going to take everything they had. And you never came looking for me. You wound up being their friends, and we were going to rob them blind that night when we got back. So that's, to me, it really puts it into perspective on how weak and fragile the group was, is that they were letting Merle just destroy and degrade everybody. And they were going to leave them all for dead. They were taking everything and bailing that night.
So you just said two things that were really intense for me. First, the observation that it shows that the group is not really a group at this point. I mean, there's no cohesion, and you're absolutely right. And I think that's really borne out in Ed's character also, Carol's husband.
Yeah.
The other thing, though, is what you said about him saying we were going to take everything from them. That's exactly what the Wolves were about at the beginning of this season.
Yeah, that's true.
So that's kind of interesting.
You have.
Yeah. That parallel is interesting.
Awesome.
So, yeah, and I guess the only other thing that I would add to the discussion of Merle is kind of backing up what you said about the interaction between him and T-Dog. That ending, I mean, I know it's so convenient, but watching that key just arc into that drain, you just know that Merle's character is completely out of luck, and it's pretty horrifying. So,
which that statement there kind of leads me into my fail.
Okay, go for it.
Is that going back and watching all this stuff, some things were just a little bit too convenient.
Absolutely.
In the writing. With, oh no, I just happened to trip just right and the key just happens to fall down the drain. Or when they're in the building and the one lady who is completely useless on everything goes on a town run, and she's an engineer and knows the sewer system below the skyscraper. It's just like, okay, these things, and you didn't realize it watching it then.
Right.
You only realize it going back and watching it now. It's just like, now wait a second. This was just a little bit too convenient, because now I think if they went back and rewrote it, T-Dog wouldn't go back and accidentally fall. He might just look at him and drop the key down the drain. Boop.
Although that's not the person that T-Dog was, because when you learn more about T-Dog, he took a van from his church and was going around trying to rescue elders when this first broke out. So they could have had Merle sabotaged by another character, but I don't think T-Dog would have done it, even with all of the awful things that Merle said to him.
Who knows?
But I do agree. I mean, I think, and to a certain degree, we still rely on a fair amount of convenience. And I always kind of laugh and think, okay, I'm watching a show about zombies and I'm believing that zombies are real. So I need to cut them some slack when they do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's all in fun, doing the retrospectives.
Absolutely.
We're bashing on the stuff because it is all in fun.
Absolutely.
And, we're not hating on it. It's just kind of in fun to go back and relive what we fell in love with and to kind of pick apart that relationship you had with it.
And you still do, you find those things where you're like, oh, I can't believe I missed that, or I can't believe I swallowed that. But for the most part, you still love it.
Yep, absolutely.
So my fail was, it pretty much builds on what we talked about last week. It's still pretty evident that there is some dispute about how the walkers are going to be played in terms of whether they have sentience, whether they have some sort of residual memory, or whether they're completely just shambling corpses. Because we've got the walkers using the rocks to bash open the plate glass doors. There was at least one walker who climbed the fence over after Rick and Glenn got through to the truck. So it's still pretty evident that there's some discussion there. And the interesting thing is, sorry, losing my train of thought there for a second. That doesn't hold true in Kirkman's depiction of the zombies at all. I mean, there was never any hint whatsoever of the zombies being sentient in any way.
Yeah, and that's one of my biggest things. And, you kind of look back and how they made the show, who was writing the show,
right,
who was directing the show at the time, and you wonder if all of these little adjustments made a part in someone's decision or, some kind of influence somewhere along the line.
Well, go ahead. Oh, I was just going to say, we talked a little bit last week about the decision to let Frank Darabont go. And I looked that up a little bit more too. And I knew that he had talked about creative differences, and I sure think this was one of the biggies. But he also said that AMC actually dropped his budget by a significant portion. I want to say it was from like $3.7 million to $3 million, which, I mean, that's still a lot of money, and it still looks like they put a lot of money into this series. But that's a pretty big cut if you're the person who's trying to do the special effects and tell the story.
Sure.
And interestingly enough, the lawsuit is also about wrongful termination. So, I don't know. AMC, I just read this thing today that said AMC is pretty confident they're going to get it dismissed. But yeah, I definitely think that this particular fail does really play into the creative differences between the teams.
I do agree. So, my fail was that how Rick was so quick to take over this group of people.
Good point. And not watching it, not watching it critically the first, I shall say, few times. That's an interesting point, is that he just kind of walked in and instantly became the leader.
Right. And that's something, when you're watching it the first time, didn't really pick up on it, but it's how the show pushed him into that leadership role to be the face of the franchise. But as I'm going back and watching it now, it's just like, wait a minute. So this guy that you literally just met 3 minutes ago.
And that you're so angry with, that Andrea's drawing down on him the first time she meets him.
Yeah, because he just cost us, we're all dead now.
Yeah.
Wait a second. So you're letting him make all of your decisions from here on out because he has a sheriff's shirt on?
Right.
Hold on a second. So, plus, not to mention, he has zero experience in this world. He still has no idea what's really happening in the big scheme of things. He just came trotting into town on a horse that just got eaten outside the tank.
Very good point. I mean, even Jackie, who you pointed out as not really having many useful skills, knows more about what's going on in this world than he does.
Yeah, absolutely. So that was kind of my fail, was that Rick just kind of slid in and was like, hey, I'm here, I'm a leader, I'm a sheriff, here's what we're going to do. And just the way he was able to influence their thoughts. For me, when they were chopping up the walkers for the guts, he's like, wait, where's their wallet? Here's their ID. Here's who they were. We need to remember this.
Although it was kind of cool to look back on that and just know that the Rick of now would not be like that
it's just
at
like,
all.
No, that's never happening again. I think that thought process went out when they were on the road at that point.
So when you break down characters' motivations, though, and think about it, so do you think that they gave Rick this authority because he had some kind of implied authority because of his law enforcement role? Or,
yeah, I think so.
And do you think it was also his handling of Merle? Because when I think about it, that's the really decisive thing that he did. Although I still agree with you. It's a pretty rapid switch to go from, we're all dead because of you, to, hey, whatever you want, dude.
Yeah, I think it's just that implied authority. You know, they see him in this uniform and, okay, cool. Yep, let's follow this guy. He knows what he's doing. Which, note, if you have your bug out bag, you may want to consider putting a first responder or a sheriff's shirt in there.
Some kind of uniform, yeah.
Yeah, some sort of uniform. So if you ever do get stuck in the apocalypse, you throw on a sheriff's shirt and instantly you're the leader.
Although with the way that the military was treated in Fear the Walking Dead, you might want to think a couple of times before you put your camouflage in there, right?
Yeah, no kidding.
So this isn't really my fail or my epic fail, but it kind of is along the same lines. Rob, go ahead and edit that out. I'm sorry. I totally lost what I was going to say there.
No, that's the fun part about doing this live.
Yeah. So do you have your epic fail?
Yes.
I really struggled, so I'm interested in hearing yours first.
So mine is just the glaring obvious that you're seeing this guy with a sheriff's shirt on. Nobody here says, oh, hey, back in our group, we got a sheriff there too. His name's Shane.
Thank you. That was actually close to what I was going to bring up. I mean, I was kind of thinking, and you
how
think,
the hell does this happen?
Right. And you think that Lori and Carl have never talked about Rick? You think they've never described Rick? I mean, I think it's kind of interesting. Of course, again, it's the convenient coincidence that this happens to be the group that he runs into, but also that no one knows.
No one just said, oh, you're a sheriff. Oh, cool. We've got another sheriff back in our group. His name's Shane.
Or, hey, this woman that's in our group, her husband was a sheriff.
Something to that. So let me just, I'll put
go
this
for
into
it.
real world terms.
Go for it.
I am in I have a Marine Corps polo on. At work and doing something. They say, oh, hey, I know a Marine.
Right.
His name was XYZ.
And they assume that you know him because you were a Marine too.
Yeah. Or I work at XYZ Bank. Oh, which is one of the major banks. And a friend of mine says, oh, hey, do you know XYZ? No, there's 14,000 people employed by this place in my state. I have no idea who that is. You know, so it just, that is my epic fail of the episode. How does nobody look at this sheriff and say, cool, you're a sheriff. Well, yeah, hey, come on in. We have a sheriff too in our group. You guys will get along great. Even just something as simply like, oh yeah, or we have a cop in our group too. Doesn't have to be, everybody knew Shane was a cop.
Right.
So how did nobody say this? In any way, shape, or form? And I get it. It's for the whole, we need the big reveal, release. They see each other. Oh my gosh, this is great. Yeah, totally get it. Totally get it.
And it's still satisfying, but you're right. Yes, I mean, when you think about it analytically.
Because to me, it could have played a story in that, oh, hey, cool, we got a sheriff too, Shane. Shane?
Right.
Like, he looks like this? Yeah. Oh my God, that's my partner. Like, they're like, oh my God, do you know a Shane or a Lori and
right.
Carl? Oh my God, yeah, they're there too. We gotta go. We gotta get the hell out of Atlanta. We gotta go.
I was gonna say, interestingly, in some way, that might have even heightened the tension of this episode.
I think it would have, because then it would have put Rick, instead of a calm, cool, and collected.
Oh, yeah.
It would have put him into hurry up and die.
Right.
Because he's not thinking clearly, and maybe he was the one driving the Challenger with the alarm.
Right.
And just hauling ass, you know?
And I don't think anyone in this particular group, even Glenn, although he was, you know, he's very young and he's very naive, but he's still very level-headed in this episode. I don't think anyone in this group would have been conniving enough to hold that information back because they wanted Rick to hold it together. So I don't think that's the reason. I think it's,
I mean, it
right,
was just road. It was road in convenience.
It's a plot device.
That. Yep, you betcha.
Yeah. Well, my epic fail is going to sound like a feminist rant, so you got to bear with me.
All right.
But I am really disappointed in the way that two major female characters were introduced in this episode. So we kind of saw Lori in the first episode, but we really get the introduction here. And this goes back to what we were talking about in our last podcast, which is that I am more and more convinced that she had something going on with Shane before the zombie apocalypse happened, at least the way that she is presented and developed in the series. And I think, unfortunately, that made a lot of people really hate Lori from the very start. I don't think the character was ever really able to recover from that. I mean, granted, it played into a lot of the drama that happened in season 2, but
go ahead.
I just think that the way that she was introduced, especially with the affair with Shane, it was kind of ham-handed. I mean, I think that it unfortunately didn't give Lori as a woman a lot of credit. Although maybe she doesn't deserve a lot of credit. I don't know. If she was cheating on Rick with Shane all along,
I think that's one of those implied storylines that you're never going to get.
Yeah.
And it is up to us to discover, because I think so. I think her and Shane had stuff going on before because they had problems before.
Right.
And Shane would literally just, when him and Rick are talking in the squad car, it was always just, he would always kind of pick and pry a little bit, but then nothing. Because if you look, we're at like week 5 or 6 after the apocalypse,
right,
when they're in the camp and she's like, oh, take me in the woods right here and all the sticks and brush. And it's like, their emotional and passionate encounters in the woods is way too far advanced.
I agree.
Than just for a what the heck kind of a romp because my husband's dead and I have nothing else.
It looks totally
to go on.
It looks totally practiced. It looks like it's happened a lot. She looks totally guilty. And the thought that she gives to taking off Rick's ring, which she's wearing on a necklace.
Yeah.
When I first saw that, I was like, oh gosh, that's really sad. That really tugs at my heartstrings. And now I see that and I'm like, she's done this before.
Oh, yeah.
So, I'm not crazy about the way that Lori was introduced, even more so. And this is the other half of my epic fail. I'm really disappointed in the way that Andrea was introduced, because the first time that we meet her, she is weak and whiny and tearful and, holding a gun on Rick that she doesn't even know how to use. And she's whining about how they're all dead. And I'm thinking to myself, this is so different than the way this character was portrayed in the book. And I know that you can't ask for a one-to-one, and we've talked about that. I mean, people are portrayed differently. People are given different arcs, but this character becomes a strong, beloved character. She becomes an integral part of the story, and to see her introduced in such a weak way, and there's a part where Merle is beating on T-Dog, and she's in the background whining, "Oh, stop! Oh, please stop!" And I'm thinking to myself, the Andrea that I know would be kicking Merle's ass right now.
Well, now I will not argue that point with you, but I will offer you this. Is I believe the reason she was like that is because she still thought there was a hope and redemption of the world.
And I do think ultimately they evolved the character in a direction similar to the direction that she has in the books.
Well, the reason I say that is because even when she gets herself under control, her and Rick are standing in the bottom of the department store.
And she's shopping in the department store.
Yeah, and she's like, oh gosh, I'd really love to have that. And Rick's like, you can take it. And she's like, but
there's a cop standing here. Right over me.
Yeah,
right.
But you're here. And she wasn't joking. She was very serious that I can't take this because you're a cop. And he's like, and it's fun to be then comparison to where Beth and Daryl are in the country club and they're just like ripping stuff off and throwing apricot brandy or whatever.
I am so glad that you brought that up because that is exactly what I thought of when Andrea was standing there hanging onto that mermaid necklace. I thought, then we've got several seasons later, Beth is just going through finding new clothes and they're scavenging whatever they can scavenge. And, that totally brought that episode up for me too. So that's cool.
Like one thing I like is when Beth finds that whole handbag and it's just chock full of money.
Right.
And they're just kind of like, what they thought they were going to need. that sure turned out to be wrong.
Yeah.
It's just this whole bag full of cash. They're just like, well, that's all kind of done and gone.
To kind of digress a little bit, but then Daryl's impulse still is to grab that cash and stuff it in his bag, which is so interesting. So, I mean, I guess that we still hang on to some stuff that we never evolve out of some of our stuff. That's true for us in real life, too.
But let me just take a side toll here. Compare that thought process with someone like crap. I should have prepared this thought better. The guy in Fear the Walking Dead, the tall black guy who.
Oh yeah. I can't remember his name, but I know who you're talking
he
about.
Instantly knows, like, here, you want my diamond cufflink? I'll trade my diamond cufflink for the key to this. When things go south, I can get the hell out of here. Do you like this Rolex? I'll trade you this. Like, he instantly knew these possessions are toast, and we need to. The world is done. So you kind of put that juxtaposition between someone who at the very beginning knows this is going south, and then people now 6 weeks into it who are still just like, they can't make that disconnect of where the world is going.
Okay, two things. One of our listeners suggested that anytime the word juxtaposition is used, you take a drink. So there you go. There's the drinking game.
Cool. Well, I have about 6 different kinds of Crown Royal looking at me. So.
And the other thing is I'm thinking about that character. God, I wish I could remember his name. And do we even have anyone who's remotely similar to him at this point? I mean,
no, I think that's just an evolution of the writing and the expectation of because this character to me in Fear is just so far advanced than everybody else. And I think he's playing a much longer game. So let's break from Fear because I don't want to get too much into my thoughts on that. I got a lot of big ideas for that.
I do want to go back to Merle and Daryl because I think, not to get deeply into Fear, but, they are probably the most feral characters at this point. The people who are the most self-serving, the people who are totally in this for themselves, and they're not even evolved to that degree. They are really looking at simple survival from moment to moment. And I think that character is more evolved. So it'll be interesting to talk about Fear.
So let's talk about, you got your epic fail done, right?
Yeah, so it was the girls. It was
the way girls.
It was the way the ladies were introduced. So
the one thing I liked about this is how each character was kind of dealing with the situations. And it kind of makes me laugh because then when I'm watching it with someone like my wife, she's like, oh, you couldn't do that. Oh, that's gross. Oh, I wouldn't be able to do it. It's just like, time out. These people are like, oh my gosh, these rotting corpses are so disgusting. Clearly, you are not equipped to be in this world because of smell. And that's the one thing that just trips me out on these shows. And it lets me know that I am going to be a survivor because I come from a farming community.
Uh-huh. So you're used
rotting
to
corpses, that kind of stuff. It's okay. Yeah, it smells bad. It makes you gag the first go around. But other than that, let's move on, folks.
I have to. It's funny that you say that because I have to tell you, as a nurse and now a nurse practitioner, I still have the most acutely developed sense of smell. I mean, I can really tell what's going on with a simple smell, and I don't know if that would trip me out or not.
Everyone's going to gag and go, what? Oh, that's gross. But to watch the chopping up scene.
Yeah.
And people just, they just kept throwing up over and over and over. And it's just like, oh, come on. Just move. That just makes me feel happy because I know I'm going to survive.
Yeah, and you think about it, the people who are really losing it are the people who lived in urban Atlanta most of their lives and would never have been exposed to anything like that.
Absolutely. So that's always cool. That's always fun. What else was in your wheelhouse for this episode?
Oh, let's see. Well, so this is kind of going back to Shane and Lori, but I have to admit, I kind of miss the sex. I mean, you would think now that we're several years into the zombie apocalypse and people are kind of figuring out you're going to live or die, so you might as well make the most of the time that you live. People are actually having less sex in the series than they were at the beginning.
Well, so I've actually had this conversation with friends and kind of talking about, this is not how it goes. I think that's more of the larger realization of a baby will kill you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's true, but I mean, we still haven't lost our technology. Our pharmacies have been looted, but have we lost all of our birth control pills? Our pharmacies have been looted, but aren't there still condoms? I don't know. I think that that's just such an integral part of the human species and just a base pleasure drive. I'm kind of surprised it's not happening more.
Let me juxtaposition that against let's realize where we are. You brought up technology stuff. So now we would be in about the 1700s as far as technology is concerned. So throw your mindset, let's say just season 5. At the beginning of season 5 when we're in Alexandria, or before Alexandria, we're not there yet. Living on the run, survival. I don't think those thoughts would ever really occur because it's more of survival, the bigger picture, moving forward.
I don't know. I mean, I think about it and I think, again, if you think you're going to die at any time, certainly you have to have basic needs met. But if you've got a roof over your head and you're safe, I also think that people are going to start to be a little bit selfish and do things that bring them some kind of pleasure before their lives end. The other thing
like
that
Maggie and Glenn.
Right. And the other thing that I would argue is that even the ancient Egyptians had a rudimentary understanding of contraception. It wasn't perfect, but it was a rudimentary understanding. So I don't think that the knowledge is completely lost.
Yeah, I mean, or it's just the evolution of the writing, and do we want to spend
time talking about that? Yeah.
I mean, if you look at the governor had his many women when he wanted.
And we're headed into possibly a similar scenario.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just, I miss it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I do because it makes me angry. Because, like, the whole Glenn and Maggie situation right now just irritates the piss out of me. Because.
But is it the relationship or is it the sex?
It's just it's the baby thing.
Okay.
How many times has Judith cost or almost cost someone their lives, which if it wasn't TV, they'd be dead by now.
Right. And if we were realistic, Judith would be dead by now, too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the problems that causes. Now, in Alexandria, if you think, which I think this is where, I wonder if we're going to find out where Glenn and Maggie got pregnant.
Right.
Was it actually once they moved into Alexandria and they're like, yep, we can do this now.
Right, because that's the spot where they've had the most safety consistently.
Right. So, okay, I'll give you that, because there is this big safety and they're seeing all these little kids and they're like, yeah, sure, let's do this. But I don't know, just that whole portion of it. And I think it kind of negates a little out of the series, but we might see more of that in Fear the Walking Dead because it's at the beginning again.
Right.
And moving forward.
And I do have to say, to be fair, it may just be something that the writers and producers are not willing to spend precious camera time on. I mean, when you think about everything that hits the cutting room floor, that's not something that's going to move the story forward necessarily.
Yeah, because, we sit here and rag on them for spending an extra 5 minutes on, someone doing bow staff skills out in the lawn. It's like, did we really need 5 minutes of this?
Right.
No, come on, let's go. So we would, and I think they realize that. That's probably the reason that we're looking at is just that the writing has progressed and evolved so far. They're just like, no way. We're not going to even waste 3 minutes. Now, if it's a 15-second clip and then they wake up and it plays a part, like where Andrea kind of woke up, she had the knife to the governor's throat.
That moves
and
the
then
story.
She kind of backed off. That moved the story because, Michonne said, hey, you're there. You can do this. You can kill him. Was that Michonne?
I think it was Carol.
It was Carol.
I think Carol was basically like give him the night of his life and then take him out.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
it's there, it's happening, and then she backs off, which I had such a love-hate relationship with her character.
I don't want to spoil anything other than say there was so much more they could have done with her, And kind of along the same lines. So you mentioned that you weren't particularly fond of Jackie. I would have loved it if she'd had more time. I think Jackie could have been a really interesting character. But
so I don't think we'll get to a juxtaposition of, or not I'm sorry, what are we doing these flashbacks? What are we calling
retrospective?
Retrospective I'm just going to make people drink. I mean, if this is really a thing, I'm just going to say it as much as I can now.
That is hilarious. We'll have to look on our Facebook page and see who brought that up.
So time out. If anybody is playing that actual drinking game, I will play along with you, and I will announce my cocktail of the evening, and then we'll do this.
Oh my God, that is hilarious. I totally dare you.
All right, we're going to do it.
I can't do it because I have to confess to the listenership that I just recently rejoined Weight Watchers, so unless somebody can come up with a calorie-free drink, I am SOL.
Whiskey. Straight whiskey and water. I'm just an absolute train wreck, so I don't care what the hell happens. So.
I am uncomfortable in my body, so that's the big deal.
So the whole, if I had to pick one character to bring back to life, who would it be and why? Mine is T-Dog.
I agree. I loved T-Dog.
He was a character who I thought was going to be a throwaway. I didn't think he was going to make it out of season 1. As it's watching, I'm like, well, this guy's dead. Yeah. And then as he kept kind of going through the motions and through the prison, I really started to like him. Like, yeah, man, this dude's cool. And then he got killed. It's just like, dude, come on. I was very sad when T-Dog bit it.
Yeah.
And then the way, what's-his-face kind of came in and took over his role. The big guy with the hammer. Why am I
Tyrese.
Blanks on
it? It's because you're sick, man.
I know, and that's what it is. Tyrese wasn't the same as Tyrese in the comic books, and I think that's because there was that absence of T-Dog, so they kind of melded those two guys together.
Yeah.
Those two characters together. I feel like they did anyways. But I would like to bring T-Dog back.
So, I'm glad that you mentioned T-Dog, because one of the things that I'd love to see is apparently Iron E. Singleton, the actor, has a one-man show called Blindsided by the Walking Dead, where he kind of tells his personal story, and he's performed it a couple of times at Walker Stalker Con, and I'd really love to have a chance to see it. Huh. Because if you remember, he had a pretty big role in The Blind Side, that movie with Sandra Bullock.
Sure.
So, it's pretty cool. So what else were you thinking when you were rewatching this?
I think that was really it. I just kind of wanted this episode to kind of move quicker. I knew the points of this episode that were going to be big, because this is one that I really remembered in detail, because it had a lot of chopping up the bodies and escaping from the tank, and we save, or T-Dog screws over Merle, and the whole Merle thing, and did we really see that coming, on how his character was going to chop his own hand off and then go run through, and how we'll get over that in a little bit, but or in the next couple of weeks,
right?
But how that character then was going to come full circle later, it's just like, no way, oh my gosh. But that kind of goes back to our long shot storylines that happened in season 1, that you just kind of, they fired a shot high up in the air, and it came down in season 3, or it came down in season 4. So this is one of them.
And they do that so beautifully, not just with things like that, but also just the callbacks. I mean, I think the callbacks, in a way, they're certainly an homage, but they're also a way to remember those arcs, and a way to tell us that those arcs are still carrying through somehow through someone else.
Yeah. And, here's the perfect example. We see the guts being reused now.
Right.
As were the ants, kind of going out of the house, and all of the walkers, why didn't they just wait? Ugh, I got so many problems.
Because you have to have the mom.
I know. Trimony.
Well, I do want to say one more thing about the episode, and then I did get our Facebook page up. So it also really it contains one of my favorite lines from Glenn. So when Rick says, "Why did you do this? Why did you help me?" Glenn says, "Call it foolish, naive hope that if I'm ever that far up shit creek, someone might do the same for me."
Right.
And I think that's such a great line. So this episode for me had a lot of really good dialogue, a lot of well-written dialogue.
Yeah, I definitely think so. And, how many times has Glenn been saved?
Right.
Now, in some way, shape, or form.
Well, and talking about firing that arc forward, I mean, look at him just getting out from underneath that dumpster talk about foolish, naive hope that someone would help him if he was that far up the creek, you know?
Yeah, and it just took someone's self-sacrifice and blowing his own brains out.
Yeah.
To land on underneath of him.
And Enid's foolishness.
Yeah, here, you want some water? Oh, you've been underneath there for 2 days? Here, you want some water?
Kablam.
Oh, never mind, I missed you. Too bad.
So on the page, I gotta give credit to Nikki Campbell-Keith. She's the person who said juxtaposition would be a great drinking game for the podcast. So there you go, Nikki. We expect you to drink along with Brian next time.
We're going to do it. What about Thomas Reese? So we had some conversation about our black and white episode.
Yeah.
Thomas Reese never watched in black and white, so I think it'd be cool. So we need to go check that out. And Yiyo Puthia, glad they're in color, but black and white is cool once in a while because it reminds me of the comics. See, I agree with Yiyo or Jijo.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree because I like black and white every now and then, but the whole season really just wasn't doing it for me.
And then Sarah actually says that it's just a good excuse to watch season 1 again. Sarah Catherine Guest, which, I mean, any excuse to watch season 1, right?
Yep, absolutely. I totally agree.
So I will also say, and again, this is props to Thomas. He was asking, where's the podcast? And as I said early in this episode, Rob is editing and he did have some unanticipated stuff happen. So hang in there. I know this will come to people after they hear that episode, but we just appreciate them sticking it out.
I agree. Thank you to everyone who is staying engaged here.
Yeah.
Who enjoys this kind of thing. Those of you who are just skipping over the podcast in your feed, make sure you at least download it. That'd be nice.
There you go.
Always head over to iTunes, give us a rating, leave us a comment. Tell us if you like the format changes, if you don't, if you want something, or if you thought of something that you thought would always be cool if you wish we would cover in some way, shape, or form. Shoot us an email, post a thing on the Facebook page, get a hold of us.
Don't forget to give us an iTunes review.
Yes.
And one more thing that I want to ask people to do, don't forget to tell us what episodes you would like us to talk about in our next retrospective, which is a retrospective of favorite episodes. We're excluding season 1 because we're doing this retrospective, and we're excluding season 6 because Brian and I have been able to cover a fair portion of season 6 together. But give us your favorite episodes in 2 through 5, and we'll take the top 5 and talk about them.
I agree. Well, hey, I don't really have anything left here because it's hard because I want to talk about stuff that's coming up later, but we have to play it one episode at a time.
Well, you know, the other thing is that we might have some one-off episodes that are really interesting, so watch the Facebook feed for those, and we'll let you know as those develop. And
as just posted on the Facebook, by me, Fear the Walking Dead Season 2 premiere is set for April 10th.
You've already got a bold prediction.
Yeah, there's already a bold prediction. They're going to be on the boat. So let's just address this now. Since we're typically run about an hour and we got 9 minutes left, I'm going to address this. So I do think they're going to make it to the boat. However, I think there's something on that boat which is going to tell us way more than what we want to know about the guy who's actually boated is. Can't remember the dude's name. I'm too lazy to look it up right now. But I think on the boat is where we find out he's more of a bad guy than he is a good guy.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we kind of know that already, but I think you're right. And I think it may be revealed to the other characters who are still fairly naive about him. Yeah, I definitely think so. And maybe they use the boat as transportation up and down the coast. To kind of go up and down, pull into a dock somewhere, go see if they can raid some supplies. Then they come back, they jump on the boat, and away they go. You know, they always have an escape route. You just got to get to the boat. I think something's going to mess up their Gilligan's Island, though. Well, fuel. I mean, at some point, you're going to run out of fuel for the boat. Yeah, there is that. So then do you start eating each other, or do you just get off the boat? So it depends on which character you are. That's right. That's right. So yeah, it's going to be back April 10th, and it is 15 episodes long. So if you think about this, you've got 15 and 15, so you've got 30 out of 52 weeks. This now means that the majority of your year will be watching Walking Dead episodes. And listening to Biters, of course. And listening to Biters twice as much. Sweet.
Well, hey, that's all I got. How about you?
That's all I've got, too. I've got a Shiba Inu that's barking his head off telling me he needs to go outside, so I think it's probably about time to wrap it up.
All right, everybody, take it easy and take it one dead day at a time.
At a time. All right. Have a good night, everybody.